Hi, my name's Stephen Hand from Archery Supplies. Today I want to talk to you about plunger buttons, how they work, the springs, and tuning. Okay, so to start off with, I want to talk about a video I saw this week about a guy tuning a recurve with a shooting machine. Now, you can do that with a compound because you're shooting a release aid. When you shoot fingers, the arrow comes out moving away from you and moving towards the bow because of the fingers. If you use a hook, and when I say a hook, a thumb release, like they do on horse bows, then you'd have to shoot a left-handed bow because the arrow is moving in the opposite direction. So the reason that the arrow is leaving the bow towards the shot, if you think about it, releasing your fingers, it's coming like that. So it's moving in a direction like that. If you shoot with a release aid, the arrow shoots basically dead straight. So when you're tuning a recurve, you can't use a release aid and go, well, I'll just get it to shoot with a release aid and it'll work. Because with a compound, you don't have these things like plunger buttons and tuning. It's not a thing. They just shoot dead straight and it's all easy. Much harder with a recurve because you've got to get the spine right. It's got to flex around the bow at the correct amount, which is very, very hard. So I want to talk about this. I want to talk about this plunger button and all this sort of stuff. So I'm going to start off and say I've been shooting for 40 odd years, and I'm starting to get into the whole tuning things with plunger buttons. Okay, so that's why I'm doing this video, to tell you what I've found and what I'm learning, and to say, look, it doesn't make much difference. I mean, you need your bow tuned, but you know, whether it's soft or hard, it's not going to make much difference, right? So let's just talk about this. So this is a biter plunger button. I'm going to say most archers will shoot with this plunger button at a high level. If you're a beginner, you don't need one of these, and biter is going to hate me for saying that. Look, if you're getting started and your bow costs $100, don't put a $160 plunger button on. Just put a cheap plunger button on. I don't care which one. All you're doing with a cheap plunger is getting your alignment correct on the bow. So you want the arrow line down the middle of the bow. Okay, that's all you're doing with a cheap plunger button. With this, you can do much more. So let's discuss that. So you've got a little wheel on the side here to increase the tension of the spring inside. So there's a spring inside here. Moving it in increases the tension, moving it out decreases the tension. Now it's more than that because there's 3 spring tensions in here. So when they first give you the plunger button, and a lot of the cheap plungers don't come with three screws. So the biter plunger looks like so. You can see it's on number 7. There's 10 numbers. So from number 1 being the stiffest and number 10 being out. Now there's little digits here so you can use it for tuning. Now let's keep this simple. Decreasing the plunger tension, so making it softer, will make your arrow shoot to the right if you're right-handed, because basically you're moving the arrow in. So think about the arrow moving in. If you increase the tension, it's moving out. Simple, right? Now, if the arrow is too stiff, okay, so if the arrow is too stiff, you decrease the plunger tension. So for me, I'm shooting 51 pounds, 29 inches. My 450 spined arrows are too stiff. Okay, so I've got a choice. I could wind up my bow poundage. I could shoot a 500, light, softer spine. I could increase my point weight, or I could decrease the tension on here. Now, for me to get this to work with my 450 spine, I had to put in the softest spring, and I'll just show you how to do that. So this comes apart. So you can see all these little things, that's where you get your clicks from. Anything inside here is the spring. So that spring comes out. Now I had to put the softer spring in, and then I had to set it to number 8, I think, to get my 450s to work. So basically, even the pressure of the clicker was pushing my arrow in towards the bow a little bit. Now that tuned up perfectly, but then I thought, well, it's so soft, would I shoot better with more tension on the plunger? So then I grabbed some 500s. So I grabbed some 500 spine arrows. Let's bring this back together. Now with biter also, with the biter plunger, you can get all these parts. So I think on this one here, I've lost those 2 screws. But all these parts you can buy to sell them, or shops like mine sell them as parts. So you can buy literally anything on here. They come in different size tips, so you can increase your size of your tip out or tip in. So basically everything's available. On your cheaper plunger, which costs $20, you can't buy the bits because it's all too cheap. Okay. Right. So then I go and shoot 500 spine. The 500 spines are too weak. So 450 too stiff, 500 too weak. So then what I do is I put on the stiff spring, and it's still too weak, the arrows. So then I've got to really tighten this up to, like, I think it was number 2 with the stiff spring to get number 5s to work. So then I'm thinking, well, what am I better with? 450s with the soft spring or 500s with a stiff spring? So then that got me to the point, well, if I shot 500s with a 100 grain point, how does that affect everything? And that's where I'm at right now. So I brought myself some 500s. I put in 100 grain points, and you can just take out your points on an arrow, but they generally put in with hot melt. Take them out, stick a point in. Points are cheap, like $15 a dozen, unless you're buying Eastern, and then it's expensive, but they're made in China as well. So, it's up to you who you give your money to, but I'm not having to go at Eastern. I'm just saying, like, points are cheap. If you want to choose to pay more for points, that's up to you. So anyway, I brought some new arrows because I want to test them. I want to test the difference between 120 grain points and 100 grain points. So when I put the 100 grain points in last night, so I'm fletching up some new arrows, put in 100 grain points, the arrows tuned weak, tuned the 500s with lighter grain points, tuned stiffer than 500s with 120. So then I'm wounding my tension out. So now I'm back to a medium spring tension inside. So 20 grains affects my spring. So my thought process to this was also, I've got to shoot 90 meters on the weekend, and it's going to increase my speed by about 10 feet per second. So basically the arrow is going to get there a little bit quicker. Let's hope it's not windy. Now when I say all this stuff, like speed versus shootability. So the concept is that a higher point weight at the front is going to be better in the wind and more stable and more forgiving to shoot. Now I'm going to go back to 1984, and I did this in my last video, the scores shot at the Olympics compared to archers 40 years on. You'll see the scores shot by, I'm going to say Rick McKinney and Darryl Pace will exceed the scores shot by archers today. And that's when they were shooting light stuff, so I'm like, well, it still gets back to the archers. Still gets back to executing good shots and doing the same shot every time. So when you overthink things like 90% of archers do, hands up if you do that, it still gets back to making good shots, right? So if I do a good shot with the arrow, with the plunger stiff, it's just as good as a good shot with the arrow, with the stiffer arrows with the plunger light. It's still the same. My scores are about the same. So now I'm going to look at 100 grain points. Hence it's going to be my next video. 100 grain points versus 120 and how my scores varied. Because I've always been on the notion, everyone tells me, well, you should shoot 120 or even 140 grain points. And with compound, it's got to 150 grain points now that people are shooting. Very, very common. For more stability and more wind stability. Rather than shooting lighter points. When I started, target shooters would shoot 70 grain points. So anyway, that's the concept of a plunger. So basically the arrow is too stiff. You need a softer spring, so it's got to be softer. If your arrow is too stiff, it's got to be harder, and sometimes you'll have to put the stronger springs in, and then you'll have to even increase it by winding this in. So biter plungers, look, they're expensive. They're expensive, but they're really good. You can get all the parts. It's going to last you a lifetime. So when do you buy a biter plunger? It's going to be my last question, my last comment. Look, when you think you're good enough. Like when money's no object, I shoot every day. I've got myself a nice bow, I've got myself nice arrows, I've got myself a nice sight that is not annoying me. If your sight is falling apart when you're shooting, that's going to annoy you, right? So replace that first. Things that annoy you, you replace first. So if your stabilizers are vibrating, replace your stabilizers first. I shot for probably, I'm going to say 2 to 3 years before I brought a biter plunger. I just shot the cheaper plungers because I wasn't good enough. Okay, so I may or may not have been state champion at that stage. I'm not saying I'm good or anything. It's just I wasn't good enough. I had so much variation in myself, and I still have so much variation in myself. It's just I was like, well, these are meant to be good, so let's try these out. And they are good. I should have changed sooner, right? I should have changed probably towards the start of my archery journey, but I generally upgrade as I go. So I generally shoot, and then I get to a point of like, should I buy something new? What should I buy? And hence biter plungers. And now all my bows have biter plungers, and they're a fantastic thing. And I should have changed earlier, but that wasn't my journey. My journey was to experiment with the cheaper ones, see how they were, and to understand the advantages of biter. 44 years of shooting, I can tell you the advantage of biter right now. It comes with all the different springs. The smoothness here is amazing. It's really good. You can, like I shoot every day. You can see the tip's good. Good thing. Like I've lost these 2 little screws here. They've obviously vibrated loose at some stage. You can buy those. Well, I assume they're vibrated loose. They might be in there and they just might be loose. But anyway, I'm Stephen Hand from Archery Supplies. Plungers, tensions. So how do you do this? You shoot bare shaft. Shoot bare shaft and see if the bare shaft shoots left of your group, and do it up close. How close? You know, I start close, like 2 or 3 meters, and I work back to 18. Okay. If your arrow is on the left-hand side, your bare shaft, it means the arrow is too stiff. So then you need to loosen the plunger. So loosen the tension in the plunger. Or put a stronger point weight on, a heavier point weight. If the arrow is shooting to the right of the group, it means it's flexing around more, and you need to basically slow it down. So increase the plunger. Think of like a longbow. It needs to be solid. So it needs to be as solid as you can get it. Or you need to reduce the point weight. So I've reduced from 120 to 100. Okay, so for me, reducing from 120 to 100 at 4 meters away from the target last night, my grouping went from where the arrows were touching each other to them being that far apart at 4 meters, and that's 120 grains to 100 grains, so about 30 centimeters apart, a ruler apart, 12 inches. At 4 meters, 20 grains. So anyway, that's where I'm up to. I'm Stephen Hand from Archery Supplies. I hope that's been helpful. And so far, I still don't know whether I'm more forgiving to shoot a stiffer plunger or a lighter plunger. And that'll be another... I mean, I've shot scores with both, and unfortunately my scores seem to be about the same. So I'm not sure whether it's best to be in the middle, or whether it makes any difference at all. Anyway, I'll leave you with that. Thanks for helping. Thanks for watching.